Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm going to go over a couple of Zoom housekeeping notes. I'm Amy France Gross. I work here in the Office of Alumni Relations, and I want to thank you for joining us for LGBTQIA with Tommy Lee and some of the students on campus. The entire Alumni Relations Department, as well as Tommy and his team, appreciate you taking your time out of your busy personal and professional lives to connect with us this evening. Before I introduce Tommy, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. First, we have not utilized the audience mute feature, but you may want to mute yourself while Tommy and the students are speaking. We are a small enough group that when you do have questions, please feel free to use the chat feature if you wish, or you can go off mic and ask the questions. And we will have plenty of time at the end for Q&A. And we are going to record this evening, so if you want to be off your camera, feel free to do that, but we will be recording just so that way folks who can't make it this evening can come back to the video. I am going to introduce our speaker tonight is Tommy Lee. Tommy joined the Lafayette community this July as the Assistant Director of Intercultural Development for Gender and Sexuality Programs. He comes to Lafayette College from Boston University School of Public Health, where he most recently was the Academic Program Administrator for the Department of Global Health. He managed 5 MPH certificates and 1 MS program, including the Sex, Sexuality, and Gender Certificate, which examined how inequality and discrimination related to gender and sexuality are major barriers to health. Tommy has a Master's of Public Health and a graduate certificate in African Studies from Boston University, and a Bachelor's of Science degree in Conflict Analysis and Resolution from George Mason. He was a Peace Corps volunteer in Guyana with the Society Against Sexual Orientation Discrimination, and in Mozambique, first as a community health promoter and later as a national gender and HIV coordinator. We are thrilled to have Tommy as part of the Lafayette community, and I've really enjoyed working with him thus far. I'm glad that you get to meet him tonight and some of his fantastic students. So I'm going to turn it over to Tommy.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you all so much for being here tonight, having this opportunity to connect and get to know you all. Speaker is an exaggeration. We really want to have a conversation. I understand that you all are such important stakeholders and have such institutional knowledge around Lafayette College. And so it's really my hope is that tonight is more of a discussion, a Q&A. And so there are no prepared slides or anything like that. But as Amy said, I came to Lafayette in July, and my background is in public health. And I'm really passionate about what it takes to create inclusive and equitable communities, particularly for members of the LGBTQI+ community, which I'm also a member of. And so Lafayette seemed like a really great opportunity because one, the position exists, which is not true for many schools across the country. And I really appreciated that this position sits within the Office of Intercultural Development, and realizing that students carry these multiple identities and those often intersect. And so not only focusing on LGBTQIA+ students, but looking at all the facets of a student's identity. Really, since July, what I've been doing is a lot of getting to know people, a lot of informational meetings with faculty and staff over the summer, and students. Now that we are on campus and together, we have a number of phenomenal student organizations that either already existed or were just recently formed. And so building relationships with them. We have some people on the call who are going to also speak about those groups in just a moment. And then also really working on sort of the initial 3 priorities. I am physically sitting right now in what is our Gender and Sexuality Resource Center. It's a space in Farranon, which is, you all know, but the main sort of student center on campus. And when I got here, COVID aside, the room was more or less a storage closet, which is very ironic for our community that we were in a closet. So we've been spending a lot of time fixing the room up, and truly trying to transform it into a true resource center. So a place where students can come not only for community building and having a safe space for hanging out and having their meetings, but they can also access affirming and medically accurate resources. And so a lot of information, or not, a lot of time is going into securing and curating what that information looks like and having resources available. Also been working on meeting with other places on campus. So this physical room that's 20 by 20 feet, we don't want it to be the only resource on campus, and we really want students to be able to access more of a theoretical resource network. And so maybe you come here as your entry point, but then being able to connect you to identified allies in the Gateway Career Center and counseling and student health services, and identifying other places on campus that are affirming and safe for students to access, and realizing that it takes a village, right? So there's other people who have these expertise that I don't have. And so it's all more of a holistic approach. Other things that we are really focusing on in the last 4 months since I've been here, programming was a huge initiative at first. It's sort of a Lafayette tradition to really celebrate and commemorate LGBTQIA plus History Month, which was throughout the month of October. And so we had over 20 events on campus. That was a mix of in-person events and virtual, a mix of having some incredible outside presenters, including our keynote speaker, who was Representative Malcolm Kenyatta from the Pennsylvania General Assembly, the first out queer person of color to represent Pennsylvania, and a candidate for Senate, actually. We also had some amazing drag performers from New Orleans talk about the drag culture and what it's like to be gay in the South, particularly around New Orleans. We also had some very important local connections established with Bradbury Sullivan Community Center, which is sort of the leading LGBT initiative and group here in the Lehigh Valley, based out of Allentown, and also forming a relationship and having on campus Eastern PA Trans Equity Project, which is a wonderful new organization in the area working to support members of the trans community. And we're hoping to be able to, again, having that network not only be on campus, but also in the Lehigh Valley area and getting students connected to those places. Both of those groups participated in the National Coming Out Day celebration and resource fair, which we had in Atrium, was sort of the flagship event for the month. We had over 100 students come by to connect with both on and off campus resources, but also just to celebrate being out, celebrate being visible, and recognizing the importance of that day and collectively the whole month. So October was a whirlwind. It really felt like it was never going to end, and it did. It's November now. And sort of the main focus that I'm really, really excited about as we head into more of finals and realizing that our student organizations do so much great programming on their own, which is wonderful because it kind of frees me up to focus on some other things. And I'm sort of talking in circles, but the two big ones that I'm really excited about, one is over the last 10 years, which is how long the position has been in place, there was an assessment done in 2012 for Campus Pride Index, which is sort of a national benchmark for measuring how inclusive and safe and affirming a campus community is for members of the LGBT community. And so we have 3 stars, but we've had those same 3 stars since 2012. The assessment, I learned, was never redone. And so I've secured access to the assessment. We've paid our dues, and we are redoing the assessment to get a more accurate measure of what we are like in 2021 and not 2012. So likely, just giving sort of a first look at the assessment, we already know that quietly a lot of things have happened over the last decade. And so we likely are probably a 4, maybe even a 5-star campus. What that assessment doesn't measure is perceptions. So it's only the existence of, is this policy in place? Does this group exist? Is there a statement on the website? It's pretty black and white. And so we're also working, when we release the information that, hey, we're actually a 4, maybe 5-star campus, having that met with the expectations of the students and having students really feel like they do attend a 5-star campus. So a lot of work needs to go around that. And then the last thing, which goes hand in hand, the Safe Zone curriculum, which is a nationwide program, hasn't really been updated or changed much in the last decade. And so one of my passions is sort of curriculum development. And so really thinking about making Safe Zone a much more comprehensive and continuous curriculum that individuals can go through. So the current model is you go through a 2-hour lecture, more or less, with no assessment. And that is supposed to then qualify you or dignify you as a safe zone on campus or a safe space, which no other entity on campus would give out that distinction after a 2-hour PowerPoint. So we are sort of changing that narrative. And I would much rather see, and other schools are doing this, but would much rather see people voluntarily getting renewed training. And, maybe there's the 101 competency that your director or your manager is sort of mandating you go to. But then we also have more in-depth sessions around the various identities and how they intersect, and truly developing action plans for being better allies instead of just giving out, here are 5 sort of generic tips on allyship. And so that's one of the main focuses that are undergoing in this first 4 months. Really, really excited to be working with these phenomenal students who I'm going to introduce now. So we have Kayla and Meredith, who are the president and vice president, they're waving, of OUT. And OUT is a brand new initiative here on campus that was sort of launched in the late spring, and they can sort of talk about the influence and an incident that happened that was the genesis for their creation. But they are officially recognized as of the fall, and they are open and inclusive to all members of the community and have a major focus on not only building community for the LGBT students, but allyship and education. Then we have Josh, they, them pronouns. Hi, Josh, who is the president of QPOC, which is our Queer People of Color student organization. And Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's in its 5th year or so. It's been around for a bit now.
I'm not. I honestly don't know. I know that Alex started it when they were in their sophomore year, I think. So I think that's like 3 years ago, 3 or 4. About.
And we also have Riley, who's a member of Athlete Ally. And my understanding, again, I've been here for 4 months, so my history is probably a little off, but Athlete Ally about 6 or 7 years. So I'm going to let the students speak just a little bit, and then we can really open it up at the end for more of a Q&A and discussion base. So maybe we could start with OUT.
Hi, I'm Kayla. I'm the president.
And I'm Meredith. I'm the vice president.
So like Tommy said, we're a brand new club on campus. And I think like one of the main reasons we started was because we just felt there was no space for all LGBTQ plus people. Like QPOC is great, love Q, but like we just wanted a space for everybody. And then a hate crime occurred on campus back in May, and then we were kind of like, we're done with this. We need to do something. Like the environment on this campus really needs to be changed. So then that's how OUT came to be, pretty much.
So I want to talk about
Yeah, sure.
So our like structure of events and planning things is typically in a month we want to do one sort of social event that's only open to club members, and then one educational event that is generally open to everyone. So I'll use October as like the basic thing. We had a meeting with the Queer Archives Project first, and that was the educational event. We learned about the resources that the college had. And then as our fun event, we did, what did we, oh my God, a Halloween
movie night.
My brain is very condom bingo right now. So we did a Halloween movie night, and we just reserved the theater and got like candy and popcorn, and a lot of people came dressed up and everything. So that was like our little fun event. And then for November, we're doing condom bingo, which I don't know like how far back that goes, but so we are picking that back up from Quest. So that's kind of a combined event because we are introducing more sex education in it, and like doing safe queer sex, safe like hookup culture and all of that. We have big plans for the future, I guess.
Yeah, since we're brand new, we're still just like, learning the ropes, I guess. And then I know we're also working with Student Gov to plan like a formal for LGBTQ plus people on campus, like kind of like a second chance dance type of thing. Because often when you're in high school, you can't like go to prom with like the person you want or dress the way you want. So we just have so many ideas and it's really exciting.
Yeah, and what they're not saying is in just 3 months, they have over 100 members affiliated with their organization. And they were also really implemental in sort of identifying some major areas for the college to address and orchestrating a meeting with the vice president of campus life, the dean of students, and the director of intercultural development to share those concerns and get together a dialogue. So that was hugely important, and work is being done now to address concerns that they identified. So they didn't leave, they left that part out.
I like to focus on the fun things, like, but yeah, we're doing it, and then we're working directly with administration to hopefully create just a better campus environment. And then we're actually going to do, trying to get one of the buildings on campus to become exclusively gender inclusive. It's the old Tri-Delt sorority building, which is now for upperclassmen housing, but then we're trying to get it to be gender inclusive housing, and that we would run it.
Right. Josh, do you want to share some updates from queer people of color?
Yeah, QPOC, Queer People of Color, it's much smaller than out. Granted, there are fewer students of color on campus and fewer queer students of color on campus. Right now it's around 50. It's like a mixture of queer students and allies. It's not as big as we want it to be because of the stigma that's in a lot of POC communities of being queer. And I really wanted to work on that this semester, but there were just so many issues with student government and budgeting and a whole bunch of stuff that nobody told me when I was given the role. So it was just me and my board spending 3 months, basically the entire semester, figuring everything out. So all of the big events that we wanted to do got pushed back, especially our biggest event of the year, which is the Arts Fest. That's probably going to be pushed till the spring. And then on top of that, we're working to get a couple of queer POC alumni to come back to the school and just give any advice or any talks or anything that they want to change, along with any artifacts from their time here, like photos or any paintings, anything that they've done, so that we can hang it up in the new port lock that's being built, and also give it to the Queer Archives Project to just like have a gallery sort of for the Arts Fest. Like, I really want it to be big. So thank God I have more time. So it's good. It's gonna be fun. And then a lot of the stuff that Out is doing, we're gonna work with them. I didn't tell you guys yet. I'm sorry. A lot's been happening. I want to work with you with a lot of stuff that you're doing. The board really wants to work with Out, and a lot of the general members also want to work with Out, because our group chat is kind of like mixed a lot. It's very together. Some people in QPOC are in Out, some people in Out are in QPOC. So it's like just like back and forth information. It's like going. So we want to work with them. We want to kind of paint the steps, the rainbow flag. That's still being debated right now. I'm like talking to Rob about that. He doesn't know what to do because it's school property or whatever or something. So that's being talked about. Yeah, I just really want QPOC to get back to its glory days, sort of, because it really went silent last year, and it's a good time to blossom. Yeah, a lot of planning, a lot of mistakes, but we figured it out now, so we're gonna move on from here.
Yeah, and we're all just learning what it's like to be back on campus and and programming and trying to figure out what sticks and what doesn't stick post-COVID, or at least post early COVID. We're not post-COVID yet, but and then lastly, we also have Riley from Athlete Ally.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm the vice president of Athlete Ally, and this is an LGBTQ organization within the Lafayette athletic community. But anyone can join, any athlete at Lafayette. Currently we have over 70 members, and we have one member from every sport on campus, which is great. And our mission is just to educate and activate the athletic community to eliminate homophobia and transphobia in sports, and specifically within Lafayette sports, and to make our locker rooms more inclusive, and just to make the community more educated so our athletes, our LGBTQ athletes, whether out or not, feel safe within their own teams. So something that we have done recently was one member from my executive board, Anya, and I, we worked with Thomas to create a PowerPoint that we showed at an all coaches meeting. So we spoke in front of every single coach and assistant coach, trainer, and athletic staff at Lafayette. We spoke about the homophobia that we've experienced within our own locker rooms, and we spoke about the survey that we gave last semester. So within our own club, we created a survey that we gave out to only Athlete Ally members, but we're working on creating a survey for that's mandatory for every single athlete at Lafayette. And we asked questions about any homophobia that they've experienced within their own locker rooms, any like comments they've heard from teammates, and we actually got like some really kind of startling results from the survey that a lot of members of our club had actually experienced homophobia within their own teams. And so we kind of compiled the survey results into some statistics that we told the coaches at the meeting, where like one of the statistics, for example, was like only 20% of Lafayette athletes could confidently say they felt the athletic department as a whole fosters a safe environment for LGBTQIA plus athletes. And then more than half of the athletes that took the survey had heard homophobic comments made by teammates. So we like compiled those statistics and we put them in a PowerPoint. And then we also had a part of the survey where you could include any like testimony, like quotes that you've heard like teammates say, any homophobic comments. And we compiled not all of them, but like the most powerful quotes, and we just put it up in the screen in the coaches meeting, and we just kind of left it there and like basically told the coaches like, these are your athletes, and like this is what they're experiencing within the locker rooms and within the culture that you've created for your teams. And so we just kind of left the quotes up there, and we said like, this has to change basically. So we went through some like basic terminology that all of these coaches probably should know, but in order to create inclusive spaces and to be a safe space for their athletes, like we literally went over the acronym LGBTQIA+ and like every letter and like said what it meant. We talked about this difference between cisgender and transgender, the importance of pronouns, the difference between gender expression, sex, and sexual orientation. And we told them that this is really important for them to know because statistically speaking, they have athletes that are in the LGBTQ community. I think it might be like 1 in 6 in my generation identifies as part of the community. So I'm like, statistically, like you have athletes on your team that are part of the community, even if they're not out to you. So I said, this is why this is really important. And this is why you should listen to what we're saying. And we gave them about 6 like actionable steps that we wanted all of the coaches to take. We told them we want all of them to get safe zone training. We want all the teams to get safe zoned. So I think I know I just talked to my coach about it last week. I'm on the women's soccer team. We're getting safe zoned in the next coming weeks. And we kind of explained like what safe zoning was. I think Thomas talked about it a little bit earlier. And then we said we want like a coach-led conversation within the team, ensuring every athlete is aware of the pledge they signed, which in last spring we signed a pledge that like basically saying that if you mess up, like you've signed this pledge, you recognize that you it's just basically a way to keep athletes accountable. And then we want to do a survey, as I was mentioning before, of like a mandatory survey of every athlete and how they feel within their own team and have they heard any homophobic comments, because I think the survey results that we took versus the survey results that we would take with the whole Lafayette athletic community might be a bit different. And so we want those numbers. So we're setting that up. And I think that's actually going to be happening soon. We said we want more intentional visibility. We want like any recruits that come on campus, we want them to see pride flags in the coach's office, and we want them to feel like the coaches are a safe space for them, and that we just want them to feel like their teams would be welcoming and include them. We talked about October being LGBTQ History Month, and we said you should show up to events. And then basically, to sum it up, we said like players live by the standard that you set with, and you create the culture, and you're not doing a good job, and something needs to change. So you should take these actionable steps, basically. So that was one thing that we just did recently. I think that was like 3 weeks ago. We had that meeting, and we've actually gotten some good response. A lot of coaches have started, I think, signing up to do the safe zone trainings, and we've gotten a bunch of emails and everything. So that aside, one of our main things that Athlete Ally does is like we have these Athlete Ally games. So we have one game for every sport is dedicated to Athlete Ally and to just LGBTQ awareness. So this weekend, the football game is the Athlete Ally game, and we're going to have a table set up. At halftime, there's going to be an announcement talking about the values of our club, and also the fact that football agrees with the values of our club, basically. Every team would post on social media about their Athlete Ally game. And there's also a banner that all the athletes sign. And we have members of our club working the games, and people can come up and ask questions. We've had people donate to the club, and this weekend we're combining with student government to take donations, and we're going to donate any donations that we get from the football game to the Trevor Foundation. So that's happening. And then one thing that we're working on is like setting up an event for next semester. And we're thinking maybe to get a speaker in, but we're not sure who it's going to be yet. So we're kind of working on that right now. But yeah, that's yeah.
Thank you, Riley. And I think one thing that's really important to mention, all of these clubs, we're really hoping that they stay aware of what each other is doing and really think about collaboration and the fact that they operate very much as a coalition. And so all of our efforts are amplified when we support one another. And there's another number of other clubs who are supporting our programs, but they're just not specifically LGBTQIA plus focus, but we work with pretty frequently. And so there's Sheesh, which is a new sort of social club for anyone who identifies as a woman or non-binary individual. We work with PASA, which is Pars Against Sexual Assault. There's a new reproductive justice club on campus. And so a lot of people are reaching out and wanting to collaborate with us. And we're hoping to then also, really start to, I don't want to use the word infiltrate, but like we know that queer students are in all types of campuses, clubs, and different sports teams. And so love the work Athlete Ally is doing. Would love to see like Greek Ally and different organizations supporting our work. I'll put it there. And like Riley mentioned, women's soccer is being safe zone trained at the end of this month. Tomorrow we have women's lacrosse. And another big accomplishment is the entire football team is being safe zone trained on December 1st. So that'll be a big one. And a new model we're also trying is, instead of having the safe zones in like Marlowe room or sort of more conference style, I've been going to the spaces where the clubs or the groups sort of hang out and exist. So the football training will be in the football building. All the other athletic trainings are in Kirby. Last week, we had a safe zone training with Chi Phi, and it was in the fraternity house. So infiltration is, I guess, a good word, but we know really getting out of this one resource center and trying to make sure that people have this message that your identity is affirmed and celebrated and seen no matter where you are on campus. It's really important. So yeah, I guess I would love to hear from you all. This is really the main reason for the call. As I mentioned, been had the chance to meet a lot with faculty, staff, and students. And Amy has been speaking very highly about the alumni network and all of you. And I think it's really important that we form a relationship and that you all can help direct what my work will look like.
Okay. Hey, Tommy, it's Stephen. Amy, is it okay for me to talk? Good, okay. Yeah, so first of all, Riley, Josh, Meredith, Kayla, I'm amazed by everything you've accomplished, and I'm amazed by the stories you have to tell. I'm kind of, in second place, amazed by how much work still needs to be done, but it's so heartening to hear the confidence and character and content of everything that you're doing. I can't tell you how happy I am. And Tommy, I agree. I think there's a lot of work we in the alumni community need to do to come together and then to support, amplify, whatever, fund, advocate, whatever it is, to actually help create the whole campus, just really weave deep into the fiber of the campus, the sense of inclusion and belonging that we want to see. I actually wanted to shift and ask you a question, Tommy, though, going back to Amy's introduction and your history with public health, and just your perspective on, especially in this very specific moment in time, with students back on campus, COVID still very much in the air, literally or figuratively or both, but just to try to get a sense from you of your perspective on the intersection of what's going on with the LGBTQIA community and with the social and emotional healthcare needs of students, because there's a very specific point of intersection for those two that speaks to particular needs. And I'm just curious your perspective on that.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question, and so many ways to answer it. One of our events for October was with Bradbury Sullivan's health team, talking about the unique implications of the pandemic for the larger LGBTQIA+ community. But I think specifically to college students, one, when everyone had to go home again, a lot of people were likely going home to environments or to family members who might not know about their identities, and essentially re-entering the closet, or definitely re-entering a different version of their sexuality or gender identity than they were able to experience on campus. And that obviously has huge implications for your self-esteem, your mental health, your academic success. And then a lot of students too, I think, missed that critical window of forming community with other queer students, for exploring their sexuality, for hearing from guest speakers and lecturers and professors in academia to talk about all of these intersecting identities, but also all of these really interesting topics. So I think we're playing catch up on sort of programming, but also catch up on making sure students are supported, making sure that they feel comfortable being back on campus, and having to, on top of everything else, navigate a pandemic that still very much is affecting us and still very much spreading around the country and around the world.
Okay. I have one quick follow-up to that. I know there's within the faculty, within the administration, I don't know so much about President Hurd. I know President Byerly was very, very supportive. There are a lot of really positive messages coming from a lot of different directions to students. Where within like just student health, the more formal process of helping understand and support student physical, mental, emotional well-being on the campus, I don't have a good handle on what's going on there.
Yeah, in a 4-month assessment.
Yeah, fair.
No, but that's a great question. I think it's important to identify what those resources are. I've had a very strong relationship already and a very welcoming relationship with the counseling center. And so Melissa Garrison and her team have been very eager about my arrival and very excited to collaborate and work together. They participated in the Coming Out Day resource fair as well. So they were one of the resources that we identified. And I think that's going to continue. One entity on campus that I would like to be able to have that same level of collaboration with is Bailey's, the health center, and Dr. Goldstein. And I think that is not that the door isn't there, the opportunity isn't there. They just have been navigating a pandemic and making sure students are vaccinated and dealing with an outbreak in the early semester. But I think that's another place that's really important piece of the puzzle. And then I'll throw out about a week before I started, Katie Bogarski also started on campus, and she is in the Dean of Students office as the student advocacy and prevention coordinator. And so she has a huge role around sexual assault, which we know disproportionately impacts members of our community. And members of our community are disproportionately less likely to report or to seek support. And so that's another person who supported the resource fair and has been very actively involved in wanting to collaborate and helping PASA, which is the Pards Against Sexual Assault, sort of also be sort of seen under our dual umbrellas, if you will. So those are the three clearly defined mental health and physical health support resources. And then, as I mentioned earlier, getting more connected with a strong relationship with Lafayette and Bradbury Sullivan and Eastern PA Trans Equity Project, so that students can seek support that's not only affirming, but is being provided by service providers that look like them and identify as they do.
That's fantastic. Good, thank you. Thanks.
Harlan, you've been off mic a couple of times. Go for it.
Hi, Tommy. How are you? And welcome to Lafayette. I'm class of '83, and as I've said many times, you can't really understand America until you've done your time in the Keystone State. So welcome. But I also want to say that just listening to the students today or this evening gets me a little bit emotional. It's amazing how the college has changed and how the world has changed, but how Lafayette College has changed enormously. So congratulations and really well done to all the speakers tonight. It's extraordinary. Tommy, you mentioned one thing at the beginning of your talk. Tell me again, if you would, what is the study or the program where Lafayette is only getting 3 stars? Because I wanted to just make a comment about that. Can you just tell me what that is again, please?
It's called the Campus Pride Index, and it is conducted, it's conducted by the college itself, but the overseeing organization is Campus Pride, which is sort of a coalition of LGBT resource centers.
Okay, because you touched on something, I mean, and I think and this is just, listen, I love the college. It's a great place, but I have one pet peeve, and that it's outward bound PR is terrible. And so the fact that, we've had this, the college has made enormous strides in its LGBT community in every realm. And yet this study has been left to lay fallow for nearly a decade. Yeah. It drives me crazy. And it's the same thing. It's not an LGBT issue, but, the college's ranking in the US News and World Report study, which, some people say it's garbage, but I believe it has some meaning, is, I think, much lower than it should be. And that's because the college is not doing an outward an outward campaign to say, hey, we're an amazing place. I mean, the campus is extraordinary. The students are amazing. The faculty is one of a kind. The facilities are amazing, and we have a gigantic endowment. So all those things combined, it's a little bit frustrating. So thank you for working on that. And I guess to that end, I think it's great, because one of the things that is the most concerning for me is the environment on campus, but are we able to attract the very, very best LGBT students from across the nation and make them want to come to Lafayette? That, I think, is a real challenge too. So I think it's, I'm glad you pointed that out at the beginning.
Yeah, and I'll speak to the assessment too. So it's 3 stars, as I mentioned, from 2012. And so you're absolutely right. It's important that we update it. And then what we're doing now is redoing the assessment so that we can have a new score by May, because in the summer, there's an organization called Best Of, and they basically capture different colleges and universities and rank them best of X, best of, and one of the things that they capture is the best colleges and universities in the United States for LGBT plus students, of which Lehigh is ranked number 8. And so if that's not motivation to...
Oh my God.
It's unbelievable. It's so
no.
That's like,
wrong.
You've just dropped a bomb on my Tuesday evening. So.
But it's funny because, like you mentioned, they're ranked number 8 because they actively do the assessment every year, right? And they've checked off their boxes. And the nice thing about the survey is it does give us a roadmap. So it's clearly identified what we do have and what we don't have, and then working with housing and campus safety or other entities to achieve the missing boxes. And then my director and I have been doing meetings with schools in the area that score higher than we do. And so last week I met with Princeton, who is ranked number 4. And obviously that's a hard comparison to make of Princeton to Lafayette based on size, but we're hoping to connect with Swarthmore and Amherst, who are similar in size, liberal arts environments that have phenomenal programs, seeing what they can do that we might be able to mimic, and then also realizing that this is just one assessment. And so Lafayette could certainly be the best of on that assessment, but I also think it's an opportunity for us to do things more innovatively and more uniquely that these other schools aren't doing.
Great.
So, Tommy, so is this like the HRC Corporate Equality Index of higher ed?
Yeah, it's really important. It gets picked up every summer by the Advocate, and they publish the top 10 schools. And then I recently learned it's called, I think, Navient or Naviance. It's like a high school help me apply for college app, and they also pick up this and have it ranked. So it's a huge selling point if you are trying to attract LGBT students.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you.
Meredith, did you have your hand? You're muted though.
Sorry, we were both trying to unmute it at the same time, so didn't unmute. But I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. Yeah, so the Naviance thing is for high school students when they're exploring colleges and they can see like the best of, like, so I had my brother look it up for me because he's in high school, and that Lafayette only does get 3 out of 5 stars, but we also throughout conducted a campus climate survey. It was very informal. It was like through Google Forms. So that more talks about like how people feel on campus. So I think we had like 49 people respond to it, 47 of which were LGBTQIA, 1 was not, and then 1 was questioning. And so based on that, it shows that like people are like treated fairly at Lafayette in general, and then more so academically. And then once you hit socially, that's kind of where the numbers scatter all over the place. Like, for example, like the one we asked if you feel safe walking across campus during the day, like 75% of that said they agreed or strongly agreed with that. And then when you put it to, do you feel safe walking across campus at night, it turns around and like 75% said they disagreed or strongly disagreed. So it's just like things like that we want to bring into administration, and like part of like the PR stuff, like we want Lafayette to be more transparent with what they're doing, because we also did learn with the meeting we had, they are doing stuff like behind the scenes. It's just then it's never communicated to anybody besides administration. Which is, as students, like you want to know that information so you feel safe, like where you're living for 9 months out of the year. So it's just like we're working with them to be more transparent about that type of stuff. And then to like better lay out like the processes of things, like if someone were to report a bias incident on campus, like how to better lay out that process for students and that type of stuff.
And I guess I can add to two things. For Naviance, it might sound like so little that like this one thing isn't ranking us high, but like most high schools use it in the United States, and you can like do a thing where you're like, I want a school that's LGBT friendly. And like, if that's a must for you, Lafayette might not show up. So it might have everything else you want, but because we have the 3 out of 5, which isn't even accurate at this point, it just doesn't show up, which is like very fundamental in getting students. And then I guess a theme that we found in our meeting and that I'm kind of hearing here is that transitions are really hard at this college. And when we get new people in positions of power or in like new organizations, it's just like, we don't know what happened like 3 years ago. So we like do a couple months of digging and we find out like, oh, this is what has been done and this is what needs to go forward. So I guess we're all starting to work together of like laying down, I guess, Tommy said it, but it's a word, like a pathway or a guideline to figure out like what needs to be done. So like Tommy said it best in our meeting. He was like, if I was abducted tomorrow by aliens, you guys should know like generally what to do. So we're working on like creating a plan for us for like, I guess the whole school and knowing what we can do to make things better.
And I'll say that there's not a lot of red tape. So I don't get told no a lot. The more common thing I hear is, oh, we never thought of that. Or like, oh, okay. So, I mean, Vice President Diorio has been incredibly supportive, and I'm genuinely very enthusiastic about President Hurd as well. She's come to the center. She came to the resource fair. She has made it very adamant that she supports this initiative as part of a larger commitment to DEI. And Josh actually has been really implemental in setting up a backyard discussion with the presidents and leaders of these clubs with Dr. Hurd directly. So that should be happening this semester as well.
Hopefully she answers her emails and the weather doesn't get too bad before it happens, because nobody wants to stand outside in the cold. So yeah, I'm drafting up right now. So if you guys want to like pre-read it after I'm done drafting the email, yeah, just let me know.
Richard, did you have a question?
Yeah, my name's Rick Engel. I'm a class of 74. I'm not a member of your community, but I'm a huge supporter of the college, and this has been tremendously informative for me. I was on the trustees at one point and all, and it's very helpful for me to hear this point of view. That's why I wanted to join tonight. I do have a question though, and maybe this shows my ignorance, but I don't remember if it was Kayla or Meredith, or maybe I'm getting it wrong, but what do you mean when you say gender inclusive housing?
And yeah, so gender inclusive housing would mean that there's no gendered, I guess like the biggest thing is like there's no gendered bathrooms in the building. You all share one bathroom regardless of your gender. So I actually lived in Conway House my freshman year, which the first floor is gender inclusive. So I lived with guys, I lived with girls, I lived with non-binary individuals, and we were just all kind of like one community. It like gender is not a factor in that community.
Was that something that you specifically chose, or were you placed here?
My freshman year, I chose it as a queer like individual starting college. Like I wanted to like that's not something I was really exposed to in high school. So I really wanted to even just educate myself more on the community. because I entered college as a out lesbian using she, her pronouns, and I'm now a trans individual who uses they, them pronouns. So like it's a journey. And I just want to be able to help support other people in their journey by giving them a space where they feel comfortable to live.
And I know a lot of like Lafayette's quite old as an institution. So a lot of floors are like female only floors or male only floors. And like I'm currently on a female only floor, but I think there's 3 gender non-conforming people on my floor. And it brings the question of like, oh, who can use the bathroom or like what's allowed. And for freshmen, it's great that there's the option of Conway House, but for upperclassmen, it's kind of up to us to like find each other and put it together, which you have to do so early. Like we had to apply for the house last week, and like most people don't even know, like you're just getting settled at this point, right? Especially like after freshman year. So we kind of wanted to make that process easier for our members and just queer individuals on campus. And it gives us a space. Well, I guess it used to be.
It used to be, I don't know what frat it was
Delta
before.
Maybe it was DTD. That the community space is so big, and that would be so fundamental. And as of right now, the Gender and Sexuality Center is kind of like a lunchroom hangout center, which is great. But by having the gender inclusive housing that has the large space, it allows us just to have like a larger social setting that's not like in the middle of Farrakhan.
And I got to run another meeting in a minute, but how are your various groups funded? Is it only through student government? I was vice president of student government when I was and in charge of all the funding when I was at Lafayette. And so does that still work that way, that you have to apply to student government and get them to give you funding?
Yeah, it's like at least a 2-week process. It's like you give them the amount of money that you want, and it has to be to the T. Like there cannot be any, like it has to be to the penny, really. And that kind of sucks because sometimes something happens and you go over budget and you need the more money. You can't just go and ask, you have to like wait. So if something happens and you go over budget, you have to move your date of the event like 2 weeks into the future. And it's very inconvenient. And also sometimes some of the deadlines for the yearly budgets are kind of iffy. And a lot of people miss the deadline for the yearly budget. And it's just like, well, wow. And then on top of that, there are a lot of clubs who get hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding for simply just existing. Like a club got $250,000 less for this year. And some clubs had to wait because they ran out of money. So it's just like, it's a very weird and terrible process. So it's like, there's really, sometimes you just lose hope. Sometimes, so yeah. Well, for me, because I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I do now, but I didn't. So we got that figured out.
Yeah, and something we're advocating for is when you have a club like QPOC and OUT and any club that's sort of a cultural or identity-based group who's fulfilling an educational purpose and is committed to the school's DEI initiatives, trying to separate that funding from, no shade, but like the anime club or the chess club, like there should be 2 separate avenues for accessing funds for these kind of groups. And so maybe intercultural development as a department would have separate money that they would then allocate. Because even though it's on paper, but students also have to justify the need for the money. And that puts a burden on these organizations to justify why supporting LGBT rights on campus is worth funding. And I don't know if you've been told no yet, but there's always that option of being told no, which is very sort of gray as to what qualifies as being told no.
I know for our movie night, it was Halloween themed movies. And we wanted popcorn and candy just to like make it a fun night to meet other queer students on campus. We asked for like $65 and we had to fight for it,
Yeah.
Like I sent lots of emails back and forth to be like, we need this money for the candy. And she was like, you can't have it. And I was like, but this is like the theme of Halloween is candy. So therefore like, we needed it. So
Yeah, they tried telling us that candy wasn't instrumental to our event that we were having. And we were like, it's a Halloween movie night.
which sounds so little, but it really adds up, especially talking to other organizations. It's just a lot of hoop jump in, which is fine, I guess, but like even reimbursement requests take a while. So like I had to front $600 for an event, like our event this weekend, and I'm waiting to be reimbursed. So it's just like so much that we have to plan ahead of time.
Oh,
Sometimes you have to be very like
So, Ron,
broad
thank you,
with the
everybody.
term.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. Sometimes you have to be very broad with the terms that you use for, especially for food, because I don't know why the guidelines are like that. I think they're working to change it. It's like with food, you have to label, sometimes you have to like make it very broad. It's like supplies to be consumed or something, or just like random words just to like, so that they don't have to read it. It's like, say, yeah, take it. So that's something that I had to learn.
so Josh, Kayla, Meredith, there's so many really hard things that you need to deal with. This easy crap should not be a problem. So Amy and Tommy, can we talk about like, this is an area where alumni can just make things easier, okay? Because you shouldn't have to be fighting for $60 for popcorn money. Like, we should have a side door we can go through to just make things that make community happen better, easier. Okay.
Yeah, 10,000%. And I think it's important too that, you know, you being told no to have candy, that maybe that would have been, and you're not defeatist, but like that could have deterred you from organizing this event, which was building community, and you had 30 plus queer individuals gather in community with one another and celebrate Halloween, which is a very important holiday for our community, for expressing yourself. And so the fact that student government telling you no, you could have very easily just walked away and not organized the event. So I 100% agree with you, Stephen, that we need to advocate for alternative ways to fund.
Good.
Are there other questions for tonight?
Hi, this is Phil James. I'm going to let Harlan cry on my behalf so that I don't have to. I'm class of 82. As some people saw earlier, I was part of the Queer History Project. I was in a meeting at work. It was all on Zoom, of course. And I was wondering, like, do people know that I'm gay? And then I realized I was using my Lafayette Queer History Project mug. I'm with Harlan. I just want to thank you students for what you're doing and just remind you that you are creating the reality that you're trying to be part of. And it's kind of hard to see from within it, but you should be extremely proud of yourselves. Maybe I'm not gonna let Harlan cry for me. You should be really proud of yourselves for what you're doing, because you're making a change for what the future is going to be like for all of us, including yourselves. So congratulations and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Phil.
Absolutely.
And Phil, you've got one of the mugs with the big leopard on it. I'm so jealous. I just have the ones with the little leopard on it.
Do you not have a big leopard mug?
I did, but I broke it. But I also have a little leopard mug, so that's the one I use now.
It was like 3 hours of interviewing, so I deserve my big leopard mug.
You too.
I appreciate so much everyone spending their time this evening, Tommy and the students, but also our alumni who, you know, clearly are out tonight, or we're spending some portion of the evening this evening to support what you all are doing. I, in the alumni office, will continue to be working with all of the alumni and Tommy to build those bridges between our alumni and the current students, and we will continue to do work to move forward and hopefully have additional programs throughout this year and beyond. I am excited for the future of Lafayette with Tommy in his role and the students who are doing the great work and the alumni who are behind all of it. So my gratitude to everyone this evening for spending just about an hour together. And certainly I can keep the Zoom running for a little bit longer if anyone has any other questions or wants to touch base. But again, thank you so much. Continue to be well and continue to do good. So thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Tommy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm gonna shut it down then. Or is everybody good? You have enough Zoom?
Thank you so much, Amy. And thank you all
Thank
for
you.
students for being here too.
Thank you
very much
Thank you.